Well, your liver had more damage than we saw in the CT, and then we found a perforation in your bowel. But we took care of it all, and you should have a full recovery.
Well, not a full recovery. Doctor, she did this on purpose, right?
I don't understand. You have a black partner, right?
Yeah.
Mary?
Yeah. Do you know how she is?
Oh, are you two friends?
Oh, look, I'm not the devil, okay? I'm just a guy with a belief system. Mary's a nice girl. We saved lives together. That's a good time. Now, if she wanted to marry my brother, I'd have a problem with that, but so would a lot of people. I'm not that much different than most of the people that you know.
Well, Dr. Bailey did save your life today. Black woman saved your life at a great personal cost. So maybe next time you're looking at your tattoo and you're thinking how much better all us white guys are than everyone else, think about that. Because between you and me, if I had been alone in that OR, you'd probably be dead right now. And since we're sharing belief systems, I believe if you were dead, the world would be a better place.
If a person thinks that they are better than other people purely based on an immutable aspect of their identity, this often manifests in an attitude of supremacy. For example, white supremacists often fear being outnumbered by people of other races and have a fixation on reproduction in order to ensure that the white race continues on. This is an extreme form of tribalism, wherein the tribe consists of those of the same race and is in addition to a hostility towards other tribes who are deemed lesser. Kinks such as race play are typically looked down upon as it reflects the beliefs of the person who indulges in it. One would assume that a white man who gets off to his black girlfriend pretending to be his slave is untrustworthy and holds racist sentiments. A man who gets off to the idea of his girlfriend being a child and reenacts rape fantasies with her can be assumed to hold odd ideas about children. So why is it acceptable for trans-identified males to get off to trans supremacy? Trans supremacy is a kink wherein trans-identified people, usually trans-identified males, are considered superior to non-trans people, and are thus given the power, fawning, and support of those deemed lesser. This is often tied to fantasies of sexual violence against women, and especially so of those who oppose trans ideology, typically referred to as TERFs. Trans supremacy is a subversion of male supremacy, reflecting the position trans-identified males hold in liberal spaces today due to being male. It is easy to notice this as trans spaces are primarily catered to trans-identified males, and even within that framework, they are painted as being the most victimized, and thus the most worthy of protection as a marginalized group. This can be seen in the premise of transmisogyny, which divides trans-identified people back into male and female groups, but positions males as being the target of misogyny rather than females.
I'm glad you asked this because I want to talk a bit about intersectional feminism. Transmisogyny is a term coined by trans feminist activist Julia Serrano in her 2007 book Whipping Girl, to refer to the specific forms of oppression targeted at trans feminine bodies. Just as with other forms of intersectional oppression, it's not just about being oppressed for being trans and being oppressed for being a woman. It's about being oppressed for being a trans woman specifically. You'll find this in other terms like misogynoir. This is something I think a lot of people miss about intersectionality. Oppression is not a simple game of addition, where you layer one problem on top of another, or where you can isolate one problem as separate from one another. Especially when it comes to things that manifest in our biology or our appearance, such as race, gender, transness, disability, fatness. We do not walk through the world as each of these things separately. Instead, we are targeted in ways specific to our manifestation of those intersections. Now, I don't think I'm the best person to speak on the experience of transmisogyny, so I've tagged 6 incredible trans femme creators who speak openly about their experience of this intersection in their content. Go get to learning!
Often, sex is referred to as a means of validation. Those who are not sexually attracted to trans-identified males, especially when their sexuality includes the sex that trans-identified males wish to be a part of, such as lesbians or straight men, are often criticized and called transphobic or bad allies. However, just because trans-identified males wish it to be so does not mean that they will receive it.
I find it really frustrating that in so many discussions about how lesbians as a group are really transphobic, so much of the evidence is centered around some lesbians' unwillingness to date trans women.
Hi. The original poster of this had their stitches turned off, but I wanted to add some really important nuance to this conversation. First of all, and please try to listen to my whole video before reacting, an unwillingness to date trans women, point blank, is transphobic. Let me explain why. I watched that whole video. Nowhere in that video was anything about genital preference mentioned, which is, I think, what the original poster is trying to get at. But they didn't say that. They said lesbians' preference to not date trans women. Not all trans women have eggplants. I totally understand why some women might have a boundary that manifests as a genital preference. Although I think even that should be examined, because at the end of the day, it's just a body part. And I see a lot of discourse in the lesbian community about, like, I didn't realize I didn't like eggplants, but then I did, and now I'm a lesbian. But that's bioessentialism. Bioessentialism is essentially reducing the gender of someone to their parts. Like, it might take some unpacking to figure out, do I really have trauma around eggplants and that's why I don't like them? Or is it trauma around the people who I have been with in the past who have wielded those eggplants? Because I know some of y'all with genital preferences are using straps in your bottom or verse, so a more appropriate way of talking about that would be not invoking the entire community of trans women when you're talking about that specific preference you have. I totally hear you that the lesbian community is probably more painted as transphobic because it's just another way to dunk on women, like you say at the end of your video. But I really don't think comparing how bad we are to how bad other groups like gay men are at respecting trans people is a good metric. Like, we should want to be allies to trans people independent of what anyone else is doing. I personally don't mind holding us to a high standard because I think we should. We are historically a marginalized group of people and we should stick up for other marginalized people. And while, yes, dating a group of people doesn't necessarily mean you're a good ally to them, choosing to not date them because of characteristics that aren't even representative of the whole group is a good indication that there's something insidious going on.
As a result, a major component of this kink is forcing those people to give sex. This is often tied to, if not explicitly, a case of corrective rape. For example, it's nasty but ultimately necessary work. They'll be happier in the long run. Once we rule the world, transphobia will no longer even be an option. Their brains are so warped and poisoned that it's kinder to just remove thought entirely. Make them dependent on our cum, fuck them until there's nothing left for them in the world. It's sad, but it's a stepping stone to eliminating transphobia. They'll live out their days, comfortable on their back, free from their own poisonous thoughts, and blissed out on those trans cocks they railed against. Radfemme used to get angry when she saw trans girls using the women's restroom. Now she spends all her time in one as a free-use whore, letting trans girls treat her like their personal cum dump. Some fucking dyke you are, she growled, thrusting up into me, taking my dick so eagerly you'll ride me for it. I tried to wiggle off her for what felt like the 1000th time that night, but her arms on my hips held me firm. No, let me go, you pervy dick girl freak. I clawed at her arms, desperate to escape the invasive pleasure tearing my cunt apart. She was too big, and I wasn't wet enough, but the more she taunted me, calling me a cock-slave turf bitch, the more I was starting to drip down her shaft. I'm still a lesbian, I whispered, losing my willpower and grinding down against her. You're absolutely right, little dove. She wrapped her arms around my back and fucked me harder. You're a dyke because I'm a woman. Say it. I'm a dyke, I'm a dyke, I'm a dyke. And you were also a transphobic cunt before I corrected you. She pulled me off her cock and I gasped with the betrayal. Now thank me by cleaning your cum off my bitch breaker, and maybe I'll see it fit to breed you. Other times, these fantasies center around hating women and illustrate a desire to put women back in their place. It illustrates the ubiquitous nature of sex essentialism and the male fantasy of forcing sexual subjugation of enemies. For example, a prestigious college exclusively for trans women, except in the spirit of fairness, they give full ride scholarships to cunt girls. Of course, you will be expected to service the real girls' cocks whenever they need, but payment needs to be made somehow, right? Last chance to back out, are you absolutely sure? I'm serious about this being a one-night stand. I'm not giving you my name or anything. If you let me do this, you're gonna have to raise a kid on your own, and I don't want you coming after me for child support or some shit. Good girl. Now wait here while I get us a room and think about the fact that you're finally gonna serve your purpose tonight. as a nameless breeder for an anonymous superior tranny. I'm convinced there are few things better than taking the virginity of a girl much younger than you. She wanted to please so badly and allowed me to be so greedy with her. Of course, I took the opportunity because I have a brain in my head. If there are any vulnerable dumb girls, sissy or trans femme, my DM is open for you. As for every ass that keeps saying I'm one of your favorite blogs, message me. Be brave. I love it when conservatives and TERFs freak about trans women in competition. Like you're attacking us by saying we're better athletes, chess players, and beauty pageant contestants. Their whole argument is, we are better because we're lesser, when it would be just so much healthier to admit they're just lesser and serve us obediently. The kink, at its core, is an illustration of why it is dangerous to allow men to identify as women and gain access to female spaces. The violence directed at those who oppose trans identification is easily enacted, as allowing entry to single-sex places can provide the three necessary components to a crime, including desire, ability, and opportunity. You'll find in contrast that radical feminists and other gender-critical people do not have a cis-superiority kink or any other sexual reaction or relation to their opponents. Their opposition to transgenderism is devoid of personal sexuality attachment. The hatred that many trans-identified males hold for females is shocking in its depth and depravity, but not especially surprising, as many who now identify as transgender were previously neo-Nazis or incels of their own admission. The hatred of women and attraction towards them simply became intertwined, as they both covet and despise the bodies of women to the extent of wanting to become one. What is particularly surprising about this kink is that trans-identified females often engage not just as targets or submissives, but as actors of trans superiority. For example, personally, I think trans men should be allowed to do misogyny as a treat, as reputations for all the shit and trauma that women put us through. In fact, I think cis women should be indentured to serve transsexual men as their personal fuck dolls, maids, and furniture. This goes double for TERFs. A cisgender woman who hasn't been openly transphobic has a chance to earn her freedom if the trans man she's assigned to thinks she has earned it. However, TERFs and radfems must live out their lives as slaves to all transsexuals. Where cis women who have been supportive of trans rights are assigned a single trans man to serve, TERFs are free-use sex toys for all transgender people until they die. The FTM need to smother a cis man with my ass cheeks while ignoring him to do complicated paperwork his dumb little cis brain could never hope to understand. Trans men are the masculine ideal. We're who fought to be men and we deserve to be respected as men. Now get on your knees and suck my cock. Worship me and cry for me while you gag on my strap. Whether you're a woman, a femboy, or a cis boy, you belong on your hands and knees begging for a trans man to put you in your place. With this idealization of rape and a belief in both transidentification making one superior to others, alongside a constant denigration of women, is it really any surprise that almost half of trans prisoners are sex offenders compared with 19% in the prison population as a whole, or that women don't want to share spaces with these trans-identified males? This, dear viewers, is where we part. I had to re-record some of this twice because I'd read one of the statements, which I've read them before, but I read them out loud, and then I do a really heavy sigh because I feel like I know too many things now. I feel like I opened up Pandora's box and now I can't put all the bullshit back inside. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.